So hey everyone, my name's Luke. I'm the director of growth over at LogRocket. It's kind of a new format for our content on the blog, which I'm sure this is how you found us today. So yeah, would love your feedback on how these go. They're valuable. If you have any, shoot me an email at luke@logrocket.com. I'd love to hear from you, good or bad. I'll only send the good stuff over to Andrew. So yeah, excited today. We're covering Svelte and progressive web apps, something that is very top of mind for everyone at LogRocket and some of the stuff I've been looking at recently. So I'm excited for this. And yeah, today we have Andrew Evans. He's a manager at CapTech Consulting. He's a really great writer for the LogRocket blog. I think you're up to like 13 articles covering like the full gamut of everything. So yeah, if you search Andrew Evans LogRocket, you can go see all of his posts on our blog, but you write all over the place. So you've got lots of stuff on your website, which we'll link after. And yeah, the recording for this, all the links, everything will be up on a page within an hour post after we stop. And then, yeah, we do have this one on the books for upcoming meetups. Another one that like I'm really unfamiliar with your QL library. So that's in not next week, but the week after. We're going to have at least 4 more scheduled. Definitely another TypeScript one, and working on a few more. But you can see all the old recordings. I think it's our 5th one in about a month at on the blog /tech-meetups. And yeah, so yeah. Do real quick, going to do the LogRocket spiel. This talk is brought to you by us lovely folks over at LogRocket. If you have never heard of the product, it's a front-end monitoring solution in session replay. This is what a part of it looks like. So right now I'm actually looking at our metrics feature. And this is where you can do a lot of like the front-end performance monitoring, like time input delay. You can see like CPU usage on the client side. I'm actually going to check out this kind of user sign-up flow that we built, and just to show some of like the proactive monitoring in terms of errors. So I've got user hitting a home page, hitting a solutions page, hitting a new account page, and then free trial. And what's really nice about LogRocket is it'll actually show all of the issues that occurred in a particular kind of segment. And you can actually go see like exactly, people who didn't complete this certain step. Were there any kind of like bugs or issues that led to them not completing that step? And then you can actually go see the sessions that actually, led to the issues. So if you haven't tried LogRocket, go give it a try. If you want kind of more information, again, shoot me an email at luke@logrocket.com. And yeah, I'm going to pass it over to Andrew. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat or in the question thing. I'll be monitoring them. And yeah, so there you go, Andrew. You can share whenever you're good.
All right, hang on 1 second. I've been using like Teams too much, and so I've forgotten how to use Zoom. So here we are.
Green button on the bottom.
Yeah, share the screen. Clicking share. Oh, here it is. All right, cool. Screen 2. Perfect. Okay. All right. So can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right, so first let's get rid of this window. Dang it. Thanks for the intro. I'm a big fan of LogRocket too. They're a lot of fun, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to talk today on Svelte, or PWAs with Svelte. So in my talk today, I'm basically going to follow through what Svelte is, which is like super high level. I mean, Svelte is something that you could spend days talking about, but basically I'm just going to cover it on a high level, talk about why PWAs are valuable and like why that's kind of top of mind for developers, and how you can do it with Svelte. And then I'm going to demo Svelte, SvelteKit, and Sapper. And the reason that we have 3 different variations of Svelte is because these are all basically different use cases that have been kind of built around what we would consider like the core of Svelte. So it started with essentially Svelte proper, which is just basically like Rich Harris's idea, and it's ballooned kind of out from that to originally Sapper, which was like a performant version of Svelte specifically targeting like mobile audiences, or things that were very small, I guess, in a kind of like a footprint need. And then finally, SvelteKit, which is essentially Sapper has stopped getting support because the people that working on Sapper started working on SvelteKit. So SvelteKit is got routing, it's got like caching, service workers, all the fun stuff. But this is kind of like the new hotness that I think is going to be the future with Svelte. But you can also, all three of these are still publicly accessible. They're all open source, and that's why I'm going to present them. So that's basically kind of where we are. And after I demo each one, I'll open it up for questions because just make sure that everybody's on the same page. So a little bit about me. I'm a manager at CapTech Consulting. I've been in the industry for 10 years. I work full stack, but primarily the front end these days, but I have a lot of experience with back end as well. And I have a master's degree from Christopher Newport University and also one from William and Mary. And these are some pictures. This is me and my wife and our cats. So, all right. So what are PWAs? So PWAs are essentially an effort to try to bring like a native experience through a web app. You most of the time prior to PWAs, you had a situation where people would have a mobile, like if you had like an iOS app that's a version of your website, you would have an iOS code base, and then you would have like a web code base. PWAs are trying to bridge that gap so that you can do everything in one place, and you can deliver very close to native experiences through a web application. The way they normally do this is through something called progressive experience or enhancement, which is kind of like a design concept that I'm not really going to go into. But the other way that they do it is with caching and service workers. Service workers are really important because they can essentially gracefully handle situations where like your network drops or there's a problem with an API call. And they create this kind of experience, which is very similar to what you would have if you had like a native app installed on like your iPhone or your Android phone and that kind of thing. There are other things that you can do specific to devices and that kind of stuff that I'm not really going to go into. But that's kind of like a high level of why PWAs are great, because the idea is that you could have one code base for all your applications, and then you wouldn't have to have these individual repos and that kind of thing. So Svelte. So I was just talking about it right here at the intro. So basically Svelte came from Rich Harris. If you Google Svelte or Rich Harris, there's a lot of cool YouTube videos. They talk a lot about why Svelte started. Rich works for the New York Times. A lot of I think the initial motivation for Svelte was around the idea of having something that was super performant, but also that focused mainly on the traditional building blocks of the internet. So instead of having to learn a framework or something, you could try to get as close to basically just writing HTML code and being able to deliver it fast and efficiently. He and several other folks have maintained the projects that are involved with Svelte, and they've kind of matured enough that I think a lot of people are adopting it at this point. I actually use it for a portfolio site that I use, and I've had a great experience. I highly recommend it. The one thing is that it is still, I guess what you could say, an experimental project. So there are going to be a few bumps as versions get increased and changes happen. But in general, as you'll see in a second, it's a lot of fun to work with. And I've actually found it is pretty performant. Like I have noticed a lot of help with just the same stuff that we're going to talk about with PWAs, but also just like your development experience. What you'll see with Svelte is that they group things in what are called Svelte files, which is basically your styles, your JavaScript, and your Vue all in one place. Similar to kind of, I guess, how the Vue.js, if you've ever used that kind of model, but it's even simpler because there is built-in things that you can do for routing or for caching images and that kind of thing. So some of the benefits that Svelte also has that I didn't mention was prefetching. You can have like server-side rendering. All these are kind of big buzzwords that are out in the industry right now because they really can improve the performance of your application, and that also helps with your user base and your customer base for your whatever project you're working on. There are a lot of great examples that are provided right with the Svelte docs, and they actually have a REPL. And let me see if I can hopefully this will work. Can I just go? All right, I'll just copy this and put this in a new tab. The tutorial that they have, oh shoot. The tutorial that they have with their docs is really great because you can actually see Svelte right out the, okay, I guess it's not working. All right, sorry, my keyboard is not being very friendly here. There we go, okay. So when you pull up the examples with Svelte, you have all of these, you know, situations and use cases that you could test out. You know, they have like conditional logic, they've got events, you've got, and then you can get like really fancy stuff where they have like motion. So you can do a thing where like, you know, it literally has transitions and that kind of stuff. All this is built into Svelte, and you can use these examples really to just learn. They have a full tutorial, but the bottom line is that it makes the learning curve very low on this because you have literal things that you can work with directly. So that's Svelte. So I know that was quite a lot of information. So let's go ahead and look at some code. So before I start, again, you know, this was all based on a blog post that I wrote. This is the post, which I'm sure you folks have seen, and I'll, you know, have that as a link at the end. But I created a project that's available on GitHub that has all the code that I'm going to show you. And these examples were actually taken from some stuff that I found on GitHub where folks had basically done something similar or had done basically what I'm, you know, trying to showcase. So I have links to all of that also in this repo. The project itself is divided into, you know, the Sapper, Svelte, and SvelteKit projects that I was talking about demoing. If you go through the post, you'll see that we're using NPX to generate either the Sapper SvelteKit or the Svelte project. And I've already done that, so I wasn't going to go through that part for this video or for this talk. But basically, you can use a digit, and then it generates it from a template. So right here, this will create your Svelte project. And so once you've done that, what you'll get is essentially what you have here. So you've got a source directory, you'll have a public directory, and this is where you're serving up your static images and that kind of thing. Obviously node modules, and then you'll have rollup. So Svelte uses, they do have a Webpack implementation, I believe, but they, most of their stuff runs with rollup. Rollup is a great alternative to Webpack. It's a lot more intuitive, and it's actually kind of fun to work with if you get a chance. So this is basically the project. Once you have that, the way that the project is rendered or the way the sequence of events that happens is basically, obviously you have your package JSON that like is identifying your NPM packages and stuff, just like any other JavaScript project. But then in your main.js file, this is essentially the entry point. So if you've used like a React project before, there's a very similar thing. If you use a Vue project, it's even the same thing. With Angular, I think it's the app.js or app main, whatever the main module is that comes. But this is the starting point. From here, then you can pull in components and you can make this very dynamic. This example is very kind of convoluted almost because it's just one page, but you can imagine that you would have multiple pages that you could pull in this site. Now, what you do is you create your pages or your components using .svelte files. So a Svelte file has your JavaScript right here, which is a script. You have what you consider your view, which would be in like the main tag right here. And then you have a style. And this style is applied to the view. All this can be like imported out. You know, there's TypeScript support. There's a lot of room to do whatever you kind of want to do. But this is generally how it works. Each one of these Svelte files has these three pieces, and then you essentially bootstrap them right here in the main file, and then your project is ready to go. When it comes in terms of PWAs, you take it a step further because you have, again, service worker, and you also have a manifest file. So the service worker, if you're not familiar with that, is essentially a background runner that runs alongside your project, and you can use it to gracefully handle activities that happen, such as losing your network connection, or maybe you have you want to cache some image files that take a long time to load, so that you'll only load them once and then pull from that cache versus having to do a fresh pull every time you show an image. So all that is basically what this is. And if you look up service workers, MDN has a great tutorial that kind of goes through how this works, but this is following what you consider a traditional service worker. So we have like an install, you create the service worker and then you associate it with events within your application. So we have an install event, we have an activate event, we have a fetch. So this is like the caching I was just talking about. So by having this in the public directory right here in your Svelte project, when the project is built, this is already bundled into your main JS bundle that gets deployed with your app. So you don't have to like this is as far as you have to go to register your service worker. You just define it right here, and the bundler will take it from there. The manifest file. So this is what's considered an experimental feature, but it's actually pretty well supported across the different popular browsers. What you do here is you identify like the icons, which would be like, the little button that might appear on your iPhone screen if you save a shortcut, or on your desktop if you're on like a regular computer. But then you also have stuff where you can have like, a theme, you can have a background color, you can even do a thing where essentially within your web app, you hide the address bar. And that's sometimes really helpful because maybe you really want to have that true native experience. You can do all that with the manifest file. So that's why these two files are really important in accomplishing a PWA. By default, these aren't actually part of the build for Svelte. So if you read my post, you'll see that I've added these, so you basically generate the project, you add these, and then you're good to go. So let's see this, kind of in action. So if I go over here and we'll go into the Svelte PWA and then do dev. So what that does is this is using the Svelte. If you look in the, you notice I didn't use start, I used dev. It's using rollup to bundle and then serve the file locally, or the project locally. So it's on port 5000. So let's go ahead and if we go right here and we hit localhost 5000, this is the project. So this is a project running. Now, if you look over here in the console, you'll notice that we have a bunch of service worker statements. So this is all written as part of the service worker file, because you see like I'm logging that it's caching, it's removing the old cache. So all these are statements that are coming from that. So this is evidence that the service worker is actually running. And then what I can do to show you it in action is if you go right here and we'll pretend that we're offline. So in this tab, I'm disabling the internet. If you pull it back, you'll notice that it's defaulted to an offline page. The service worker is serving this up instead of serving the main page. And then you can see right here, the service worker is fetching these files. So these files are also cached. So this is essentially a Svelte PWA kind of in action. And then obviously, like if I go back here and turn it back to no throttling, then it should appear and everything is good. So I'll open it up for questions before I switch to the other two. Looks like there's some stuff in the chat. Let's see. Okay, so we have SvelteKit is still in beta. Successor of Sapper is not developed any longer.
Yeah, we've got one question in the Q&A button.
Okay. Oh, there we go.
Thing. Like, yeah, like, have you shipped any like production stuff with this kind of setup?
Not with like this, like specifically. What the portfolio site that I was talking about, I'm just going to close this. The portfolio site that I was talking about is just, and if you go to andrewevans.dev, this is using Sapper, which is the one that I'll go into next. But this is basically using the same thing as far as like the building blocks of Svelte. It's just, as you guys are talking about in the chat, it's not supported anymore. So if I was going to do this again, this site is probably about 2 years old or 3 years old. If I was going to start this over again, I probably would use SvelteKit, because that's the one that's like the newest one that's getting work. But that's pretty much the closest to a production app that I have. Professionally, most of the stuff that I work on is React and Angular, primarily because as a consultant, the clients that I work with are large, like Fortune 500 companies. So they don't, they go for like the older, I guess, kind of technologies. And this is still kind of, I think what you would consider like a new and up and coming thing, even though it is stabilizing. So unfortunately, no, I don't have any 100% like production stuff to show you other than my personal project that's right here. But I can say that I've maintained this for, like I said, 2 to 3 years and had a pretty great experience. And there's quite a few other folks that have used this for either personal sites or even like e-commerce and that kind of thing. And again, if you Google it, you'll see a lot of customers that are investing. And another plug for the New York Times, Rich Harris uses this with the New York Times. So obviously that's a very large company, a lot of viewership. So does that answer the question?
I'd say, yeah, with the New York Times is a good one.
Yeah. I wish I had a chance to work on a production version. I'm hoping that maybe like with one of my next clients, you know, I can convince them to do this instead of using React, but we'll see. So, all right. So that was Svelte. So now if we swap over to Sapper, because I just talked about Sapper, let's just do that one. So Sapper, as I said, was designed with the idea that it would be, you know, for like mobile apps. It was designed for performance, kind of built around. It came, if you notice, Svelte by itself doesn't actually have routing. So if we go back, a little hard to see, but if you go right here, this is the Svelte project. I'm only using one page, but there's not actual like a default routing mechanism. So you would have to pull in, there's a NPM package that would work with this. You could also kind of get a little bit fancy with the way that you're rendering like one page. You can kind of create your own router. But that's kind of like, I would think of Svelte as kind of like what React is. When you do like a create React app, you just get the bare bones. If you want React router, if you want Redux, if you want any of that stuff, you have to pull it in. Same thing with Svelte. Sapper, when you build it with the npx script, and there's a template that it's using, what it comes with is this routes folder. So what happens here is Sapper uses this very similar to the way that like Next.js or Nuxt will use basically page files or files that are really standalone components, but they're rendered with this kind of router that exists on your entire project. That's all built into Sapper, which is one of the reasons that I originally went with that rather than Svelte, because it saved me some time and effort. But in terms of Sapper versus Svelte, the only real big difference is what I was just talking about with the stuff that's built in. If you notice, you still have like an about page that is you've got your view, you've got that's actually not a very good one to use an example. Okay, so your index page, you've got a style, you've got essentially what you would consider like your view right here. And then it looks like there's not really any JavaScript because I'm not doing anything fancy, but maybe on the error page. Oh, here we go. Okay. So you have script, you have a style, and then you have what you would consider your view. And this is actually using a conditional. So this is showing you that Svelte has, it's kind of got shorthand. It's built around the idea, I should have started, said this when I started, but it's built around like an imperative programming model. So basically like these if words that are right in your file are interpreted as conditionals. It's very kind of similar to how I guess you would use like Blazor or one of the other like Microsoft old school .NET kind of things, but it makes development a lot easier because now you're not, you do this and then you can build in the behavior right there in the template, which is kind of cool. So anyway, that's a lot of words. I hope I haven't lost anybody, but basically the whole thing is that Sapper and Svelte are very similar. Svelte doesn't have as many things that are built in that Sapper does come with. But again, unfortunately, Sapper has stopped getting support. So, use it at your own risk. What we've done here is I've generated this with the script, just like I did in the blog post. So if you go down a little bit further and we go right here to, that's SvelteKit now. Okay, one more time. Oh, here it is, Sapper. Okay. So with Sapper, you use digit again, using rollup with this template. And then right off the bat, you didn't actually have to add a service worker because it came with the project. And so that was another thing, again, that Sapper was bringing to the table, was that it was what I would consider kind of more of like a plug and play kind of app. Instead of having to add all this stuff right off the bat, you're ready to go. So what they have is they have a manifest file right here. And then in your source directory, you have a service worker. So what the service worker is almost the same thing that we just did with regular Svelte. We have an install and activate event. We have fetch and caching. And then we have a manifest file, which is we're using for like our icons and that kind of thing. So we can do the same thing we did a second ago with Sapper. And if we go just do the npm run dev, and again, that's using rollup to build and serve the file locally. If you go over to localhost 3000, this is the project. So now you can see like this is all working, everything's good. But now if I go ahead and go offline and I refresh, you'll notice that it says like page can't be reached. And apparently this is not going to work. I had this problem a minute ago. So in full disclosure, I'm not sure if this is my Chrome browser. Maybe I can try hard relash. Nope. Let's try no throttling. Okay. There we are. All right. So now so let me try doing this and do the cache. And now if I do this, it should offline. There we go. Now it's working. Yeah, I had to empty my cache. So the problem with PWAs also is that because you're caching files, sometimes you have a situation where if you want to actually truly test the PWA functionality, you'll need to do it with essentially a built version of your site. You'll need to serve it. So that's just kind of like a small caveat. Usually with local development, I don't necessarily worry about that, but here we are. So with that, I only have 5 minutes left. So does anyone have any questions? There's a Q&A right here. Are Svelte and PWA production ready apps at enterprise level? Okay, I would say yes, only because when I was like writing this article, I saw a lot of prominent people using this in their projects. I would say that the big thing with this is that, again, it's going to be case-by-case basis, and you're also going to have to closely follow the development pipeline of these projects. Svelte is open source. You can watch their repo, but that's the only kind of caveat to working with this technology. So with that, the last part of this, I'll just go ahead and pull up SvelteKit PWA, which is the SvelteKit version of the site. So SvelteKit is it's a much more improved version of Sapper. So basically, if you go into and I shouldn't really say that because it's its own thing. It's not necessarily related to Sapper, but I will say that like the experience playing with it was very similar. So what you have in SvelteKit PWA is once you generate this project, you have a source, you have routes. So there's like routing mechanism. There's a CLI associated with the SvelteKit that will allow you to add additional features and that kind of thing. And this is much more what you would think of as a feature-rich framework that you can use to, get up and running. Once you have basically generated your site, in order to make it a PWA, all you have to do is add the service worker, which is the exact same thing that we've been doing so far on all the other two implementations. And then finally, you'll also add a manifest file in your static directory. So all three of these frameworks have the same, they're using, Svelte files, which is, a script, a view, and your styles. They're also using, like all of them have some version of the static directory, which is what you'll use to host your assets. As far as more fancy kind of features, if it's a route, then, SvelteKit and Sapper come with routing built in. If you use Svelte, you're going to have to add that or customize it. And finally, when it comes to things like service workers or PWA functionality, you'll also have to basically add that into your apps. And now that we have the SvelteKit one, just to show you that I'm not lying, if I go over to SvelteKit 3000, this is not here. Let me go over to incognito. There we go. All right, so this is the SvelteKit project running. If you look right here, we have the network. Now it's it's awful. Oh, it's not good. Let me try that again. Incognito. All right, here we go. Okay. And now that should, there it is. Okay, so now we're running. And so now if I swap this over to offline, you'll notice that it's doing the same thing it did a minute ago. Okay. Well, we're out of time, so I'm not going to probably dive into that, but basically you can imagine or you can understand what I was trying to go for there. So do we have any other questions before I turn it back over to you, Luke?
I don't think so. Yeah, no worries about time. I guess like for SvelteKit versus Sapper, like, is there anything major, especially with regards to service workers, that are like different?
Right. I don't think so. I think because in both of the implementations that I had done in the post, I basically just copied the file. The SvelteKit one was actually, this person has written a great article that was very easy to understand out on DevTO. If I can get this. I should also probably put this in the chat. Here, I'll go ahead and just put this in the chat right here. This article, he basically just shows you like how to build a SvelteKit project and then add, the service worker, and he walks through like what, each one of these does. But the mechanism and the way that this was written, specifically with service workers, basically follows what you would look at if you just go right here and look at the MDN article on service workers.
Yeah.
It's got the same events, it's got the same like prefetch cache, that kind of thing. And so I think the main reason you want to use SvelteKit versus Sapper is because SvelteKit is being maintained.
Yeah. And then looking at all the Svelte files, at least for me, it like reminded me of handlebars and just like horrible like file bloat. Like if you had like a giant app, like how would you go about managing that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, so the way that they do it is like basically if you look in the REPL, they've got a couple of different examples. But what we can do if we go over to, no, that's not one. Maybe try. Oh, come on, don't do that. All right, well, these have like some of the ones that I was using like a while back. I remember they had, here it is. So basically they pull out the different pieces to like what you were just talking about, Luke, and create like their own Svelte file. So it's very similar to like with React, you would solve that situation by creating components, and then you would, basically compose your project. It's the same thing with Svelte. The only difference is that instead of having to have a separate like CSS file, HTML file, and the JavaScript file, you've got everything in one place.
Yeah. Not have to do CSS and JS, which is the bane of my existence.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. JSX can be hard, but I do have to say, like I had a lot of Angular experience before I got into React, and I do kind of like the JSX in its own way because it does like. There are times when it's kind of nice to have everything there, but I'm totally with you. The conditionals, this is like a good example. These are the conditionals we were just talking about. And we have like else blocks. So
very cool. Anyone else have any other questions before we sign off? Like I said, this whole recording, all the links, and we'll throw that Dev2 article in there as well. Will be up on the blog later, and yeah, if you want to sign up for more meetups, it's at blog.logrocket.com/tech-meetups. Thanks for joining, everyone. We'll see you later.
Yeah, thanks. I just put the link to the GitHub project too for you.
Yeah, I'll throw that.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
All right.
See you all later.